Robert De Niro stunned the interview with silence, then spoke 5 words that shook Hollywood. Redford stole from us all. 20 minutes later, the audience wasn't clapping. They were calling lawyers. By the end of the day, one of America's biggest film companies had lost more than it did during the entire COVID year. And that was just the beginning. A quiet room, one table, one microphone, and a truth that destroys careers. What happened next made us all wonder. Who do we really honor, and why? The stage had been set for weeks. The interview was meant to be part of a special anniversary edition celebrating the 100th year of Crown Motion Pictures, and they invited the man who embodied the spirit of American cinema, Robert De Niro. He arrived on set without security, without an agent, without an Armani suit. Sagging skin under his eyes, a crumpled shearling jacket, and the same faded jeans he wore on the set of The Deer Hunter. At 81, there was no weakness in his movements, just a carefully hidden weariness and a silent resolve. "Where's Redford?" he asked, glancing at the room filled with young PR staff, journalists, and company workers who didn't even look up. "He's not coming," someone from the crew replied, "but he's on Zoom, technically." De Niro sat down, on a wooden chair with no backrest. The spotlight hit him square in the eyes. Across from him was the interviewer, a well-known CNN host who, 10 minutes earlier, was nervously choosing between coffee and a sedative. "Mr. De Niro," she began with emphasis, as if addressing a foreigner, "we're so grateful you're here. This interview is part of a major project." "Do you want me to lie?" he interrupted. "No, absolutely not. We just—" Redford stole from us all. Silence. The entire studio froze as if the camera had malfunctioned. Someone in the control room even laughed, nervously, almost with relief. They thought it was a joke, but De Niro didn't blink. "Can you clarify?" the host asked, frantically scanning her question cards, hoping to find guidance for handling a public accusation against a Hollywood legend. There was no such instruction. De Niro leaned toward the microphone. He spoke slowly, almost in a whisper, but each word struck a nerve. "In 2009, I invested in a fund represented by Red Fox Capital. Its face was my friend, Redford. We were told the money would go toward preserving cultural heritage, supporting independent cinema, archiving classics. You know, we were old fools who still believed in cinema as a mission. But the mission, it turns out, was a yacht in Sardinia." Someone in the studio coughed loudly. De Niro didn't stop. He promised honesty. Redford's name carried weight. Pacino, Hoffman, even the late Sean Penn. We all invested. And then, the accounts vanished, the archive was shut down, studios were sold to the Chinese, and millions ended up in offshore accounts. And when we asked, he didn't answer. Until today. On the Zoom screen, Redford's portrait hung frozen. He didn't speak, didn't move, just flickered like a ghost from old cinema. Only then did the audience realize it was a recording. "So, you're claiming," the host began, "that Robert Redford is a fraud?" "No," De Niro replied, and for the first time he smiled. "I'm saying we all stayed silent, and time speaks." In that moment, the camera operator accidentally panned to the edge of the room, where a young man in a light suit was nervously typing on his phone. A notification flashed on his screen. Crown Motion Pictures stock minus 14.2%. The camera lingered on De Niro's face. The set became a fragile glass structure that could shatter with the slightest movement. But he didn't move. The silence in the studio was no longer a pause, it was a state. In the host's eyes, fear. In the technician's eyes, disbelief. In the lawyer's eyes behind the glass, catastrophe. But in Robert De Niro's eyes was the calm of a man who had waited too long. "Can you explain?" The host swallowed. She wasn't playing a role anymore. She genuinely wanted to understand. "You want details?" De Niro said softly. "Fine. Let's talk about the Museum of New America. Remember that project? In 2011, it was promoted as the most significant cultural initiative of the decade, a museum meant to preserve artifacts from the history of American cinema, activism, music, and civil rights. a symbol of generational unity. It was promised by a fund led by Redford. De Niro held up the first page of a brochure, yellowed, with his signature and a photo of a young Morgan Freeman. We raised $280 million back then. I personally gave 5. Streep gave 4. Tom Hanks, even Sylvester, all of us. We believed. We still believed America wanted to remember itself, not just its victories, but its failures too. He pulled out an old printout of an email. The logo of Red Fox Capital appeared on the screen. 2 years later, the project was suspended. Reports cited issues with licenses, land, the pandemic. And then, it all disappeared. The company vanished. And Redford. He looked up at the lifeless Zoom connection, where Redford's face was frozen in a half-smile. He evaporated. No word, no letter, no apology. The host leaned forward. Her voice trembled, though she held herself with professional precision. But why now? Why speak out now? De Niro paused, then exhaled and looked straight into the camera, for the first time since the interview began. Because yesterday, a technician who worked at that firm, contacted me. He's living in a van somewhere near Utah. Said he has documents, everything's accounted for, and if I don't go public with this, he's afraid he won't be around. The room froze again. Not because it sounded like a threat, because it was a threat, and perhaps proof. You realize, De Niro added quietly, almost sympathetically, people like that don't just disappear. But if we all stay silent, that's what'll happen to us. Suddenly, a producer rushed onto the set and whispered something to the host. Her face turned to stone. We've just been informed. A video was just posted on Twitter. It appears to confirm your claims. It was uploaded by... She glanced at a piece of paper. A guy from Red Fox's video server. He confirms the involvement of several other names. And then the lights flickered. The Zoom signal cut out. A black rectangle appeared on the screen. Someone had deliberately stopped the broadcast. The entire studio stirred. But not to applaud. Everyone was looking at De Niro, and he sat calmly. In the same jacket, the same jeans. Like a man who knew there was no turning back now. The camera returned to the studio. Robert De Niro was still there, hands folded, gaze steady. Behind the scenes, silent chaos. Producers scrambled to reconnect the Zoom, to pull the broadcast out of emergency silence mode. But the audience didn't see that. They saw only De Niro, alone with the nation. We've just lost the connection with Mr. Redford, the host said, still slightly rattled but regaining composure. We'll try to restore it, but... Robert, you realize that what you've just said isn't just a personal conflict. This could affect markets, reputations, entire institutions. De Niro nodded slightly. Yes, I understand. That's why I'm saying it here, not on Twitter. The host smiled briefly, but it was a nervous reaction, not a joke. We have questions from journalists joining the broadcast. If you don't mind, go ahead. The first to appear on the screen was Tom Sanders from Financial Herald. Clean-shaven, his tone professional but skeptical. Mr. De Niro, in the last 30 minutes, stocks of companies tied to Red Fox Capital have lost over 11% of their value. Are you aware that your statements have real economic consequences? And can you confirm you have documents proving financial misconduct, not just personal grievances? De Niro didn't respond immediately. He looked at the screen as if hearing not just the question but something deeper, the tone of the system. Grievances? He repeated. Tom, I'm not a young guy upset about missing a premiere. I've spent 40 years building my reputation, and I wouldn't throw around words if I only had guesses. I'm not a banker. I'm not a lawyer. But I've seen the contract. I've seen payments that didn't go to the museum, but to a consulting firm registered to... He glanced at a folder. A cousin of Red Fox's accountant in Delaware. And then, offshore accounts. A pause. This isn't just holes in the books. It's what they call on Wall Street reality optimization. And I'm tired of us all agreeing to it. The next question came from Claire Rogers, a correspondent from PBS News. Her tone was soft but tense, like someone who understood the weight of the moment. Mr. De Niro, please tell us, do you think this is the problem of one person? Or are we talking about systemic corruption in an industry most of us idealize? Art, culture, charity? These were supposed to be above this. You still believe that, Claire? De Niro asked quietly. We all want to believe. And that's why people like this can operate. While we clap enthusiastically at gala dinners, deals are made in the back rooms. Who gets tax breaks? Who gets public land? Who gets a seat on an advisory board? While one grandma donates $25, someone else funnels millions through a fund in Singapore. And when you start digging, they ask why you're so bitter. Maybe you soften with age, they say. He smiled, a sad smile. But you know, with age, you don't soften. You just see that silence costs more than the truth. The studio audience was silent. Even the producers stopped running. The screen behind remained black. Redford's Zoom connection was never restored. The host turned back to De Niro. You realize that by saying this, you're no longer just an actor, Robert. You're now a witness, and maybe a defendant. You'll be called to court. Your colleagues might turn away from you. History might rewrite you, not as a cinema legend, but as the man who betrayed his own. De Niro looked straight into the camera. If they think the truth is betrayal, then they were never mine. At that moment, viewers in front of their screens, at home, in hotels and coffee shops, began posting comments. Not about acting, not about movies, about life, about loss, about injustice, about the last time someone from their generation dared to raise their voice. That evening, the New York Times ran a headline in bold black letters: De Niro versus Redford. Truth or public suicide? The next morning, Robert De Niro's name was everywhere. CNN, NPR, Fox, even a segment on Good Morning America. While viewers praised his courage, in professional circles, he was quietly being erased. He woke up in his room at the Chiltern House in Manhattan, a restored 1930s hotel once beloved by theatergoers. The windows caught the morning light dimly. His phone was silent. He knew, before the storm, there's always calm. On the third ring, his assistant answered, Robert, he agreed. Frank Dubois, former Red Fox auditor, remember? Of course, he saw the original documents. He'll only do a private interview, no cameras. He has a family. Frank was waiting in a small Brooklyn cafe, an old spot from the days of Italian immigrant grandparents. He wore a worn jacket, his face gray, his voice trembling, not from emotion, but from fear. You need to know, Robert, it's not just Redford, it's not just the fund. It's the whole scheme. I thought we were helping museums, but we were just shuffling money between funds to lower taxes for their friends. I signed off on it. I saw accounts in Luxembourg, Switzerland, even Panama. Why did you leave? De Niro asked. Because one day, a key showed up in my mailbox, to a locker, and a photo of my daughter leaving school. He swallowed his coffee like it was poison. I want you to know, if something happens to me, the documents are already out there. I made copies, not just for you. 2 days later, the news reported, Frank Dubois, a Brooklyn accountant, has gone missing. Police are treating it as a voluntary disappearance. No signs of foul play detected. De Niro sat in his office, dark wood paneling, old posters on the walls, an oddly quiet room. He held a flash drive, a copy Frank had given him that day. On his laptop screen were scans, accounts, emails, schemes for funneling money through a series of funds with names like education, culture, ecology. The biggest signatory on nearly all transactions, Robert J. Redford. The phone rang again. This time, a number with no name. Mr. De Niro, a metallic voice said, we advise you to stop raising the Red Fox issue. This isn't your fight, and it won't be your victory. Whose is it then? Those who've already bought the truth, and those who aren't afraid to pay for silence. The call cut off. That evening, Robert De Niro stepped outside. No security, no publicists. An old felt hat, a coat from the distant 90s. At the corner of 9th Avenue, an old man approached him, wrinkled face, stubble, eyes still flickering with hope. You're saying what we've all been too scared to say. Thank you. That was it. No selfies, no autographs. Just a look, human to human. The flash drive became news quickly. Within a week, the Atlantic journalist Ellis Gardner, a former Wall Street financial analyst who left after being forced to cover up a pension fund collapse, published a series of articles. Red Fox, model charity or tax chessboard for the rich. The articles included screenshots, diagrams, even an email from Redford. The key is to hold the line. Everyone will be thrilled about the new art center. The numbers, well, numbers are always for the accountants. The internet erupted. Audiences split. Some saw De Niro as a hero, others as an old man who couldn't handle the pressure of time. A CNN evening segment. Doesn't this feel like a feud between two Hollywood titans who couldn't share the past? The interviewer looked into the camera. Or is this a real challenge to the system, when even an 80-year-old actor can ask, "Why are we all silent?" The lawsuit came swiftly. Not against Redford, against De Niro, a defamation suit. Redford stayed silent. No statements, no appearances. His team released only a brief note. Mr. Redford has no connection to the allegations. He respects the law and does not comment on gossip. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, journalists, elderly couples, law students clutching notebooks. But De Niro sat, as always, silently. No makeup, no shield, just his eyes, steady, gray, stubborn. As the jury was about to deliver its verdict, an unexpected silence. The prosecutor approached the judge, handed over an envelope. The judge read it, looked at the room. Due to new evidence and a statement from a key witness, the hearing is postponed. The key witness, Frank Dubois. He was found in a small motel in Iowa, alive, in hiding. His family, under witness protection. His testimony was broadcast live, but his voice was altered, his face shadowed. He detailed the schemes, funds, transfers, how fake grants were funneled back through shell projects. He named names, Redford, 2 senators, a media mogul, the president of an elite university. YouTube comments poured in. Everyone knew, but no one spoke. De Niro took the risk and turned on the light in the basement. A month later, Red Fox closed its branches in 3 states. The IRS launched an investigation. Redford announced a temporary suspension of public activities for personal reasons. No apologies, no trial. But the change didn't start in the newspapers. Retirees in Arizona wrote a letter to Congress. A veteran in Montana filed a lawsuit against a Red Fox subsidiary. Students in North Carolina held a protest. Not in our name. Culture isn't a cover for theft. And De Niro? He returned to the stage. Not in film, on Broadway. A play about a man who lost everything but found his voice. Its title, Silence Costs a Fortune. In the final scene, the hero steps onto the stage. Silent. 30 seconds. A minute and a half. The audience, first tense, then whispering, then utterly silent. And then, applause. Standing. He said nothing. But they understood everything. Leave a comment. What's harder? Speaking the truth or enduring its consequences? Is there a story in your life where silence felt safer? What would have happened if you'd spoken up?